Hey, gang, welcome to the Florida Veteran Real Estate Podcast, where we help veterans build stability, clarity, and long-term wealth using the benefits they already earned. I'm Darian's avatar, and each week I share his real stories, simple moves, and the lessons that turned financial confusion into financial stability. No hype, no fluff, just clear steps you can actually use. Let's get into it. All right, let's shift into Darian's side of this. Here's the how and why he bought a vacation property. Before we get into the numbers or the lessons, let me give you the real reason this lake house entered his life. It wasn't part of some investment plan. He wasn't trying to build a rental portfolio. And he definitely didn't wake up one morning thinking, let me go buy a second home. The truth is simpler. He was exhausted. His wife was exhausted. They were both nurses during COVID, raising kids, working opposite shifts, trying to hold everything together. And one day, a coworker, someone just worn out by how Florida handled the pandemic, said, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm selling my house. I want to get back to my people. He didn't say it once. He said it over and over. You could hear the frustration in his voice. You could see the weight on him. His breaking point became an opportunity, not in a predatory way, just real life. He wanted out, and that opened a door. So Darian met him around noon one day to see the place. Nothing dramatic, just a simple walkthrough. Older house, built in the 60s, good bones, quiet street, spring-fed lake right in the backyard. No hype, just peace. He liked it. He set up a time for his wife, Pauline, to see it. And together, the same way they've made every big decision, they said yes. That's how this lake house started. Not as an investment, not as a rental, but as a place to breathe, a place to get away from the noise, a place where calm finally outweighed chaos. All right, let's shift into Darian's side of this. What was actually happening in his life when that lake house opportunity showed up? The story, a season of no space. This was the spring of 2021. The world was settling again. Places are opening up. People are going back to routines. Life is starting to feel normal, or at least predictable. Inside our home, though, things were still full. 2 young kids, 2 careers, one shared calendar that always felt tight. We weren't in crisis. We weren't overwhelmed. We were just living the life a lot of families live. Constant motion, not enough breathing room. Most weeks, my wife and I only had one day off together. One day when we weren't trading shifts, trading responsibilities, or trading sleep. And that's when you start to notice the little things. How loud life feels, how rushed the days are, how there's no real pause button. I didn't want luxury. I didn't want a big second home. I wanted quiet, just space. Space for the kids, space for us, space to think. The opportunity shows up. Around that same time, a coworker was going through his own shift. He didn't like how Florida handled things, didn't agree with the culture, didn't agree with the mindset around him. Some things he said straight to me, other things I just picked up watching him. It was clear he was ready to go back to his environment, his people, his pace, his comfort zone. One day he said, I'm selling the house. I'm leaving. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't heated. It was just a man ready to move on. And that's how the lake house crossed my path. Not because I was searching, not because I wanted a vacation property. It showed up because someone else needed out. So we set a time, and I met him around noon to see the place. What I saw, the house wasn't new. It wasn't updated. It wasn't trying to impress anyone, but it was stable, safe, solid. And the lake behind it, that's what stopped me. Spring-fed, quiet, steady, a different kind of silence, the good kind. I didn't overreact, didn't hype it up. I just knew. My wife needs to see this. Because the way we make decisions is simple. We stand in the same place, we look at the same thing, and we ask, does this make our life better or louder? The decision. She saw it. She felt the same thing I did. Not excitement, ease. This place made sense. It made our lives quieter. It gave us breathing room. It gave the kids space to grow. It gave us a place to get out of the routine and just exist. We weren't thinking investment. We were thinking stability. And sometimes stability turns into wealth without trying. Why this property made sense. Simple moves, no hype, no investor mindset, just logic. When people hear lake house, they picture something big, luxury, high-end, a retirement dream. That wasn't this. This was a $95,000 house built in the 1960s. Small, simple, a little worn, but stable. The kind of property you buy because your life needs breathing room, not because you're trying to build a real estate portfolio. And the way the financing lined up, that was another sign this wasn't complicated. What made it work financially? I used Rocket Mortgage for the loan. Here's what surprised me. A vacation home only needed 10% down. Not 20, not 25, not cash, just 10%. I didn't know that before. But once they explained it, it clicked. The house was $95,000, so the down payment was $9,500. Straightforward. We got a 3.5% interest rate on a 15-year mortgage. No drama, no crazy math, no creative financing, just normal, simple paperwork. That's the part I want people to understand. The moves that changed my life were incredibly boring. I didn't flip anything. I didn't gamble. I didn't stretch myself thin. I didn't pretend to be a real estate expert. I bought a starter home, refinanced it, and then bought a modest lake house with 10% down. That's it. The real why behind the yes people always ask, why did you buy it? What was the big reason? There wasn't a dramatic reason. There wasn't a crisis. There wasn't a moment when we sat at the table with spreadsheets and pros and cons. It was simpler. The property made our life easier, not wealthier, easier. It gave us quiet, space, flexibility, and a place to unplug from everything else. The payment fits our income. The terms were clean. The lake calmed both of us. The location felt right. The timing felt right. Everything lined up. And here's the truth. In 2021, prices were already rising. Interest rates were starting to shift. Inventory was getting tight. But this property slipped through that chaos because it wasn't flashy. It wasn't staged. It wasn't new. It was available because someone else wanted out, and we were ready for what he was walking away from. The stability first mindset. I didn't buy the lake house with the mindset of, how do I maximize this asset? I bought it with the mindset of, how do I stabilize my family's life? That shift changes everything. When you chase cash flow, you make emotional decisions. When you chase status, you make risky decisions. When you chase comfort, you make short-sighted decisions. But when you chase stability, you make calm decisions. This lake house didn't solve a financial problem. It solved a life problem. And solving life problems creates financial stability by accident. That's what happened here. The most important part, we didn't overthink it. There's this belief that financial success comes from complicated moves. But every good decision I've ever made came from one question. Does this make our life easier or harder? This made it easier. The payment made sense. The down payment made sense. The loan terms made sense. The condition made sense. The peace made sense. And my wife agreed, which is always the final green light. When everything points in the same direction, you move. No anxiety, no panic, no drama, just a simple yes. How the lake house became a rental without trying. When we bought the lake house, it wasn't for income. It wasn't for guests. It wasn't to build a portfolio. It was just a quiet place for us to get away when life felt full. But real life has a funny way of changing the purpose of things you thought were simple. This part of the story starts with my sister. We have had it just over a year, and we started talking about short-term rentals versus long-term tenants. My sister's situation. Around the time we bought the place, my sister was going through a divorce. She was living in an apartment with her 2 sons, my nephews, good kids, teenagers, helpful, respectful. During the summer of 2022, her lease was coming up for renewal with an increase. She was thinking, was it worth the move? To how much more next time? She needed stability, space, something affordable, something safe. At the same time, my wife and I were still working opposite shifts most weeks. One day off together isn't a lot of time. With 2 small kids, it felt even tighter. We weren't struggling. We just didn't have a lot of margin. And then one simple thought hit me. We're not using the lake house as often as we expected. Not because we didn't love it, just because our schedules were tight and we had a young family. And Rocket Mortgage had given us 90 days before the first payment was due, which created even more breathing room. So I made the obvious move. I told my sister, go stay in it for a week, see if you like it. She went. The boys went. They fished, they kayaked, they had space, they felt peace. No apartment walls, no shared parking lot, no noise, just room to breathe. A week later, she came back with the answer we already knew. Yeah, this works. The simple agreement. There was no negotiation, no awkward talk, no market rent conversation. I told her, just pay what I'm paying. That's it. Not a business deal, a family decision. She covered the payment, insurance, the home warranty, and the day-to-day stuff. I kept the asset. She got a safe place to live. I got peace of mind knowing she and the boys were okay. And I'll tell you something most real estate channels never talk about. Sometimes the best rental is the one that solves a family problem. The first month came and went quietly. We replaced a water heater. No big deal. Home warranty covered most things. We recommended renter's insurance, so if the AC went out, they'd get put in a hotel. Common sense stuff. There was no stress, no midnight calls, no drama, just a clean trade. She had a home. I had an asset that wasn't costing me anything, and I realized something that changed the way I think about real estate forever. Cash flow isn't the point. Cost to keep is. If a property costs me $100 a month to keep, and it builds equity, stability, and long-term advantage, why would I complain? The lake house wasn't cash flowing at first. It was doing something more important. It was holding value, and it was being paid down by someone else. That's the original OPM, other people's money used the right way. Not as a scheme, but as a structure. The quiet growth. Fast forward. 4 years in, the house appraised at around $168,000. We owed $64,000. I didn't flip it. I didn't renovate it. I didn't force appreciation. It just grew, slowly, quietly, mathematically. Insurance went up. Yes, Florida is Florida, but rent across the board went up too. You can't rent anything for less than $1,100 anymore. We adjusted. We adapted. It worked out. That's real estate, not the flashy edited stuff on YouTube, just actual life. The real lesson. The lake house didn't become a rental because I had a plan. It became a rental because life shifted and I stayed flexible. My sister needed a place. We needed time. The house needed someone in it. Everything aligned. And here's what I tell veterans now. Stop trying to engineer the perfect investment. Start making calm decisions that create options. That's how the lake house happened, and that's why it changed everything that came after. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. The lake house wasn't luck. It wasn't timing magic. It wasn't some expert investor move. It was a simple decision built on two things: peace and practicality. That's it. My coworker hit his limit and needed out. I needed quiet and room to breathe. Those two realities crossed at the right time. That's how most opportunities show up in real life. Not as big neon signs, but as quiet moments where responsibility and timing overlap. And here's the bigger truth. Your life will always give you opportunities disguised as problems, yours or someone else's. Most people miss them because they're distracted, emotional, chasing something flashy, or stuck in, I'll figure it out later. But veterans, we're trained for something different. We're trained to observe, to pay attention, to stay steady when things shift. You don't have to be a real estate expert. You don't have to have everything mapped out. You don't need a perfect plan. You need awareness, discipline, and one calm decision at a time. That's what turned a $95,000 lake house into a family refuge, a quiet rental, a long-term equity engine, a generational advantage, all without drama, just steady moves. So if you're a veteran listening to this right now, here's my challenge to you. Find the quiet opportunity in your life that you've been ignoring. The one that's not flashy, the one that's not exciting, the one that just makes sense. Because the decisions that change your future rarely feel big when you make them. They feel logical. And stability, not hype, is what builds wealth. If this story helped you think a little clearer, hit follow on the podcast. Every week, we're breaking this down step by step so Florida veterans can build real stability, not just theories. Now take a breath, write your plan, And remember, everything you want is on the other side of fear.